Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian, and this is the fourth or the fifth episode of our weekly podcast, Cold War 2.0. And we have a lot to discuss today with Dr. Tarik Cyril Amar on this show, Cold War 2.0. We will start with a few controversial topics, one of which is a colleague and a friend from Ireland. He's a journalist based in Moscow, Chay Bowes. He was detained and deported from Romania and sent back, I believe, to Turkey. And then we will discuss how the German government is now classifying the opposition party AfD officially as a right-wing extremist party. And then we will discuss Ukraine's minerals deal and NATO's future. And finally, we will have some laughter about a recent video posted by the CIA itself encouraging officials in the Communist Party of China to spy basically on their own country in favor of the CIA. So if you are looking forward for that video, you have to stay with us till the end of this conversation. Tarik, how are you doing today?
I'm fine and looking forward as always. Thanks again for having me.
At least we are not detained yet. One of our colleagues, or at least one of my friends, Chay Bowes, who has been very annoying, it seems, for the EU Brussels bureaucrats.
Good for him.
Yeah, he was in Georgia recently. I think he pissed them off and he caught some attention. And he was in Serbia. He pissed them off, so he caught some attention. And now he flew to Bucharest to cover the political events there.
Yeah.
And he was detained at the airport. And he was considered a threat to the security of Romania and deported to Turkey. And I just want to mention that Chay has a European passport and he was traveling from a European Union country to another European Union country, and he was considered a threat and deported from the country.
Yeah.
I don't have much comments about this, Tarik, because the comments would definitely bring lots of headache for me. I don't know if you have a comment that doesn't bring so much trouble for you, at least in this case.
Yeah, I don't know about the trouble, but he has by now made some statements about this online on social media, and I've listened to them. I hope I haven't missed any. And in many ways, I can only agree with what Chay Bowes himself has been saying about this incident, which is that he suspects, and I think he's absolutely right, that this isn't even really coming from the Romanian authorities, or at least not mostly from them, but that the force behind his detention and his being, kicked out of the country really is Brussels, is the EU. And I think you were very right when you said that he has probably annoyed them multiple times. He works for Russia Today. I write for Russia Today regularly, also, of course, not the same kind of relationship or prominence. This is much greater. And that, again, is probably something that has served to blacklist him in their eyes. But as he has stressed, he is an internationally unionized journalist. He's an accredited journalist. He is an EU citizen, actually, right? So the legal grounds on which this could be done to him do not exist, right? Quite apart from the fact that it's unethical and obviously foul and corrupt and whatever you want to call it, it is 99.9%. It's also totally illegal, even in formal terms. So what we have seen here in terms of procedure, right? It's sort of like ancien regime. It's like lettre de cachet, only that our lettre de cachet is not issued by the king of France, right? The absolute ruler of France. It's just issued by someone somewhere. We don't know, but I believe him probably, I'm certain, in Brussels. It has a very Kafkaesque aspect to it as well, obviously, right? You are up against, or he was up against something a totally transparent bureaucratic force that suddenly reached down to get him, and that doesn't owe you even to tell you who you are really dealing with, right? It's
Yes.
opaque, it's intransparent, it's secretive power, but it's there to get you when they want you. And they clearly don't respect any sorts of legal restraints anymore. And I think he's absolutely right. As far as I have understood what he has been saying about this, this has been one of his points, that he repeatedly said, look, if they can do it to me, Chay Bowes, they can do it to all of us. And I think he's absolutely
Anyone.
right, because he
Yeah,
has
they
a
can do it
certain
to anyone.
prominence, right? He can reach an audience. It gives him a tiny bit of protection, but many people don't have that, not at all, right? They're just private citizens. And I think he's perfectly right that we are now in a situation in the European Union where the much praised rule of law doesn't apply anymore. It
Yeah.
applies as long as certain bureaucrats allow it to be applied, but they ultimately, it almost gets like Schmidtian. Remember the legal theorist of German fascism, Carl Schmitt, right? Real power, I'm simplifying, but still, one of his ideas was, and it was a fairly cogent idea, that real power in politics lies with the people who decide on the emergency or on the
Yes.
exception, right? So you can have all sorts of laws or rules, but if you're the person who gets to decide when the rules don't apply, that's real power. And you get the sense now that there are a lot of people around in European bureaucracies and governments and security services and police agencies who claim exactly that power extremely easily, because that's
Yes.
what they did in his case too. To claim that because he came in to report on the Romanian elections and presumably interview one or two politicians somehow constituted a security threat. Like, I mean, you have to really think this through. Like, he's carrying like uranium or something, right?
He is creating biolabs in Romania for
It's
sure.
completely absurd. But by doing that, the people who did it, they sent us a signal. They said, we don't care. We use any pretext we want, and we know it's unbelievable because only an idiot would believe this, and we don't care because we can do it to you. That's
Yeah.
the message here.
Tarik, I've had my personal beef and experience with in Europe, let's say, and I truly believe that the political power here, or the people who have the power, the judicial, the legal, the police, the secret service, etc., they're too powerful and they can abuse the law.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I
they can.
I also believe that in some cases they could really like circumvent some of the procedure, even
They
the
can.
legal procedures, if they want to target someone.
It's
Um,
happening
I have,
all the
yeah,
time.
I never gone public about my case at least,
Mhm.
but I'm 100% sure that they can manipulate and exert pressure even on the courts or on the
Yeah.
judges and on the
Yeah.
secret services or those who are
Yeah.
doing surveillance. And before we move to surveillance, because now we have also an issue with the German opposition party AfD, they are considering
Mhm.
it a radical right-wing party according to the Verfassungsschutz. But before that, we are living at times that journalists like someone like Chay, I don't know, somebody says I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, but I believe his name is Chay Bowes, right? And he has been doing a great job showing you the other side of the story that you don't see in the mainstream.
Mhm.
I mean, you have lots of options to watch the mainstream, and
Yeah,
then you have
exactly.
options like Jay, if you want to,
Yeah.
can follow
Yeah.
him on X and read what he says. You don't have to
Yeah.
believe everything he writes,
Yeah.
but you have
Mhm.
now at least two sides of the story or
Yeah.
multiple sides, and you're smart enough to evaluate and make your own conclusions. However, we have also journalists, Tarik. I promised you to have a laughter at the end of this conversation, but I cannot but share this screenshot with you right now. This is Clarissa Ward from the
Oh,
CNN.
she's
She
an
received
actress. She's not a
sh-
journalist.
she received the so CNN's chief international correspondent has been
Uh-huh.
awarded the
Uh-huh.
2025 Daniel Pearl Award for courage and integrity in journalism. a decision that you remember this moment when Damascus fell
It is
into
not,
the
I
hands
mean,
of
listen, these standards, that's like me or you winning the Miss Universe pageant. I mean, what is this? It's so absurd.
Like even after this faking a report, basically with complete absurdity
Yeah,
from
I
Damascus and
remember
multiple
that one.
times.
Yeah.
Larissa, by the way, she's not alone.
Oh, she had one
I
from Israel too, where she was lying flat on the ground and pretending
You
she was
remember
under
that?
fire
Yes.
and stuff.
Yes, and she was doing live streaming when she pretended that she's under fire, and
It's a joke.
her friend Abu Damon in 2018, she went to city of Idlib in the north west of Syria, and she sniffed a backpack basically there on camera to determine whether or not chemical weapons were used
Oh.
in Damascus. She literally sniffed the backpack, and I can show you the
It's a
screenshot.
weird thing to do because usually that's a superpower that we associate with German dogs and stuff. Like it's basically a canine
I
thing.
I can assure you, like this, you will be amazed by this. This is her basically, and sniffing a backpack. Those people are basically guys journalists, and that they're doing really acting classes or something. I don't know. So as you can see, like she first she sniffed the backpack here, and then she put her fingers on her nose, and she said, "Ooh, there is something. It stinks here, definitely chemically."
Yes, yes.
Like,
Because
uh,
look, if I want to find a chemical weapon, the first thing I do is I inhale it and then I lick it off my finger.
And these people are the ones receiving these awards and prizes and professionalism and integrity in journalism, Tarik. Okay, so let's be clear about that.
They're
That's
just
very
laughing at
important.
us. Kevork, they're just trolling us.
I've never seen anyone goes and sniffs a backpack to determine there has been a chemical attack or not. As you said, like you really
Oh
have to
man, this
be
looks like plutonium. Let me have a little bit of that.
yeah, like you really either have to be so unsmart or you know
Yeah,
that there was no chemical substances there to sniff a
unsmart.
backpack,
Yeah,
basically. That's the word to use, because then YouTube comes after certain
yeah,
terminologies
yeah.
and
No,
downgrades your
no,
video
no,
if you're
no,
using
no.
insults. So
We
we
won't
have to
say
be
that
good.
other word. No, no.
Yeah. Tariq, today I woke up when I was preparing for the show. This was not a topic in the morning, but then during noontime and in the afternoon. So we have the Verfassungsschutz, which is the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. This is the internal secret service, right? The domestic
Yeah,
secret
it's the
service.
internal security and secret
So
service. Yeah.
for those who don't know, Verfassungsschutz, guys, so it's the internal secret service of Germany. They have classified the entire alternative for Germany, which is called AfD, as quote definitely right-wing extremist. As a result, the party is now officially considered hostile to the constitution, and intelligence surveillance methods are possible, which means now they can spy on the politicians. First of all, how do you see this classification? We know that there are definitely people in the AfD who have far right talking points, and then you have other, I don't know, like it's a mixture of different politicians and officials, also depending on the region and the popular base of the AfD. Some of them are more far right because their popular base wants to hear that, and some of them feel, for me, it's like they're normal conservatives. But in this case, the classification, the timing are interesting. What do you say about it?
Look, to get one thing out of the way, I know I repeat this every time, but I think it's important to explain where I'm speaking from, right? I'm a German. Yes. My mother is German. My father was a Tunisian, right? Tunisian, Morocco, it's all mixed up in this case. So the people in the AfD who talk about people like Passdeutscher, right? You're not really ethnically German. They would target somebody like my father if he was still alive, right? And they might be very ambiguous about people like me or my sister, right? Because we are only half real Germans in their eyes. So I have no sympathy for the AfD, right? Personally, I have no sympathy. And also, I'm on the left, and they're very much on the right, and I think deliberately so. But having said all of this, I think this classification is a political act. It's clearly a political act. It happens at the time when the AfD has become extremely successful electorally. It has, in recent polls, as you know, become the single strongest party, overtaking the mainstream conservatives who used to have that place, right? Merz people, the people of the chancellor. Now, it is true that the underlying process that has led to this classification, right, has been going on for a long time. Let's be fair.
Yes.
It's built on a very long report of over 1,000 pages and so on. But, having a long report doesn't mean it's not political, right? It's not that simple. However, doing this now is under an enormous suspicion of being a political act to do two things. One is cement a so-called firewall. So that means, yes, they can participate in political life. They will not be prohibited, but nobody will ever go into a coalition with them. That's the firewall principle. And when you do that, because German governments are basically always built on coalitions, you're essentially saying, however many people vote for you, you will never get into government. There are other aspects to this, which, for instance, has to do with how you get representation on parliamentary committees. That's also very important and very much affected by this policy of the firewall. So this is one side, right? That they're being quarantined. They're allowed to exist politically. They're not repressed directly, but they're quarantined away. The other side is, of course, the possibility of really trying to prohibit them. And I think that's very important to be clear, especially for people who maybe are not from Germany, that when the domestic intelligence service, which the Verfassungsschutz is, makes such a classification, it does not mean yet that a party is prohibited. Those are two different things. It does, however, mean that if there were an attempt to prohibit the party, its chances would increase, its chances of success. The other thing one has to know is, you're absolutely right, when a classification like that is done, when such a label is attached to a whole party, it becomes legally easier for the Verfassungsschutz, for the inland or the domestic intelligence service to spy on them, literally to spy. You can
and
use
this means
informers.
spying under electronics and all the
Electronics,
accounts
informers, all of these things.
without them knowing.
Of course, no, it's spying, right? Really, you have to inform certain judges and stuff, but yes, you can do surveillance and you can infiltrate officially. In German, this is called V-Leute or V-Mann, V-Frau, I assume, which is, it's an informer. It's somebody you send into an organization to tell you stuff from inside while they're pretending to be part of it. That's it. It's an informer. It's an infiltration. That's all allowed. Now, one thing I would add, even before this classification was now and came out today, there was already such stuff. Because even when the Verfassungsschutz classifies you as suspect, right, that is the prior stage of being, of trying to attack the constitutional order, they can already start this stuff. So it's actually a matter of levels, right? They can now spy more, as it were. They could spy before, they can spy more. So all of these things are in play. Of course, there is a public relations issue, a reputation issue. Now, what makes this very complicated, and then I'll let you talk again, I'm sorry, but two things makes this all very complicated, which is, even once a party has been fully classified as endangering the constitutional order, the actual process of fully prohibiting it remains actually very hard. It's a very tricky process, and it remains very tricky. There are many reasons for this. And the second thing is, and this is more political than legal, the people who think that by attaching this label, they will make this party less popular are most likely going to be wrong. Yes. I think what is going to happen is that the party will acquire a bit of a martyr nimbus. I think that a lot of people, left, right, center, will think what I think, that this wasn't done for good reasons, that it was done for political reasons, to eliminate them as a competitor, which is, of course, an abuse of the system. And that actually, with people who have some sympathy with them, will make it more likely that they attract voters. Not my vote. I would never. But for instance, people who are now still with the mainstream conservatives. So if these guys think that they can make this party less effective politically, they might be entirely wrong. They might actually make them stronger.
Tarik, they're not only attracting the, let's say, middle centrist conservative people, they're also attracting left-wing people. I know, now I don't want to go into personal examples, but I know a person
Not me.
here, and this person in the 90s, she was from very close to Antifa. And they had a band here basically in Germany singing all these anti-fascist songs in the streets. There are videos of them like basically blowing up entire Berlin, you know, burning down cars and tax the rich and coming after this and that. And now they're voting for AfD, and I was like mind blown, you know, like because of this, you know, like not all people go into every single detail in these political parties, but rather see what the mainstream is not recommending. So they go to that direction. That people lost all trust in the experts, the mainstream press, etc., and especially now the mainstream parties. That's why when I say when you say that they're not doing any disservice to the AfD by classifying it like this. No, they are basically giving them a service. And the Democrats in the US have tried this approach, the smear campaigns, pulling far-right Nazis, racist, etc., and it led into Trump again to power because they're not addressing the core issues, what the people really care about in Germany, but rather slandering the opposition in this case.
But there is an irony, you know. Now imagine that the current coalition between the mainstream conservatives and the social democrats who are not left, you know, so it's not the case, that doesn't work, which I think is very likely. Or maybe they make it through the whole 4 years and there are new elections then, right? And imagine the AfD is not prohibited and continues its trajectory of success. And imagine they suddenly get like 32%, which in Germany is a lot. And then there's a situation where the mainstream conservatives can only build a coalition with the AfD, right? They're forced to do this. But at that point, the fact that the AfD will have been officially labeled right extremist will make their life much harder. It won't make the life of the AfD harder. It will make the life of the centrists harder, who ultimately may very well have to build a coalition with the AfD. And I'm going to be very intrigued how they will deal with that sort of trap that they're setting for themselves now.
Yeah. One of our commentators says, as a German, I would seriously consider voting for AfD as a vote for democracy or against anti-democratic rule. So you see, like people are always sensitive now about this censorship.
And if I may say something about this, right? I've been honest about it's not my thing, but I understand that position. I understand it very well, I think. And here's why I think I understand that position. Because, look, in the last elections, there were two parties that offered a real alternative, right, to this centrist morass, to this radical centrism. And that was BSW, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, and it was AfD. Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht has been eliminated, I think, by electoral fraud. I really think by electoral fraud. So now the AfD is actually the only party that offers people what looks like a real alternative. Personally, I fear they might be disappointed, but that's just me. But I can see the perspective. I understand why that is becoming attractive.
In this case, Nancy Faeser, the still domestic interior minister of Germany, she made a statement about this case.
Can I say something about Nancy Faeser very quickly?
Please.
Very quickly. Look, Nancy Faeser, if you listen to this, we know that you love freedom of opinion. Please, 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 don't sue us. Don't send the police. We know you love freedom of opinion, Nancy.
And guys, just also for Nancy Faeser and those who work for her, if you go to the description of this video, I just have to read this again carefully. The views and opinions expressed by the guest do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Syriana Analysis and Kevork Almassian. I have to say this every time I talk to Tarik. Because the ceiling of freedom of speech has become a little bit on our heads recently. You know, it's
I think it's
falling
the
and.
floor now, actually. There's no difference between the floor and the ceiling anymore.
So no offense, Frau Nancy Faeser.
No
We're not
offense. No offense.
discussing
We
your
know you never.
personality at all. We know you have good intentions. So we're just
Absolutely.
presenting what you say here. You said that you say the AfD represents, quote, an ethnic concept of the people and a folkish attitude. This is populistic attitude, she means, Tarek? Folkish? What is folkish here?
You know, Völkisch is a very peculiar term now in the German because I don't think it means populist here. It means something else. It's a direct reference to Nazi language, right?
Okay,
Before the Nazis, it was one word, but after the Nazis, it has a coloring now. It's very associated with a sort of very right-wing fascist type of nationalism, right?
Okay. So she says that the AfD represent an ethnic concept of the people and a folkish attitude. The Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, according to the outgoing Interior Minister, works independently, and the review was conducted thoroughly and neutrally, she says.
As independent as the Süddeutsche Zeitung, you know, the guy who's just been promoted to new Regierungssprecher. They're all independent. None of these people know each other. They're not in sort of any networks and associations. No.
So there is no conspiracy in this, right? It's just a legal procedure.
No. It's a totally clean legal procedure. Yeah. Like the ones with which we investigated the Nord Stream explosions. That's a completely clean procedure. Yeah.
That definitely was independent and transparent.
Absolutely.
And
no
we
politics.
have all the answers. We got all the answers for
wait.
Right?
There's the other one. There's how we assess what's happening in Gaza. That's totally independent. It's pure legal assessment, right? We just go by the Völkerrecht, by international law. No politics at all.
But they say that they expect Israel to investigate itself and present the results. So at least they have expectations from Israel.
You know
right?
what I wonder when I hear that Israel is supposed to investigate itself for the millionth time is why didn't the Nazi get to run the Nuremberg trials? You know, the Nazis could have investigated themselves, right? I mean, not a big deal, right? Well, you know what I don't like about our politicians? They're treating us like total idiots. They're not telling us lies. They're telling us lies, but they're not telling us sophisticated lies. They're telling us lies for complete idiots. And they're basically saying to us, this is what is good enough for you. Believe this, which is saying you must be dumb, right? I mean,
but you're so true, Tarek. When I turn on some of, like, I don't have mainstream outlets, but on X, some people sometimes post segments, right? And it's like short videos, 3, 4, 5 minutes. But then when I watch it, I truly feel like they're trying to humiliate your intelligence. Like they're provoking you, you know, they're treating us like we're sheeple or we're idiots. But this is in my opinion, yes, it has some impact on some people. But then it's awakening so many other people. Like I haven't seen more people waking up, especially after COVID and October 7, as it is the case today. Like the mainstream press has lost completely its, let's say, credibility. And that's why you see in the United States nowadays there is this intentional approach to go into this podcast. And they're trying to bring the podcasters into the arms of the billionaires and oligarchs and PR firms. So all these independent podcasts who were critical on so many things, all of a sudden they became the mainstream press. So which means the mainstream failed, and the people who were behind the mainstream are now buying some of the podcasts, let's say the influential ones in the US, or sponsoring it. You know, you have lots of financial incentives as well for these podcasters who were for a long time independent and they were suffering, and all of a sudden, like somebody opened the tap water of money, and people changed their opinions all of a sudden. So I see this as an indication as well that the traditional mainstream failed, but we are also seeing the establishment of a new mainstream, basically represented by podcasters.
The struggle never stops, right? But if I may add one more thing about this AfD issue, you know, I think we agree, correct me if I'm wrong, that inside the AfD, there are parts of the AfD, and they're not without power, and they have serious weight, right, that are very far to the right. That's absolutely true. There is also a part that I think is exactly the same like the CDU. Now, that doesn't mean they're nice. I cannot stand the CDU, right? So let's be very clear here. But if you're a German politician and you say what the CDU, the mainstream conservatives, represent, that's okay, that's legal, that's appropriate, that's legitimate, then you also have to admit that a large part of what the AfD does is the same. Another part of what the AfD does is beyond that. That's true. It's a mix. But this whole idea that you can simply say, oh, the AfD are these outliers, they're different from all of us. There's nothing that resembles us, and we can sort of make them the scapegoat of our political sins. That's ridiculous. That's one reason why I'm so much against this approach to them. It's nothing original. I believe they need to be contested and fought politically. But this whole idea of prohibiting them, surveying them, no. Because so much of what the mainstream parties do is actually very similar. Do they all want to be surveyed? Do they all want to be under prohibition threat? Fine, go ahead.
Tarik, my approach is I see in every country you have from left to center to right, far left, far right. In every country you have this type of parties or politicians. But the question is, why would today 26% of the German people vote for AfD? Like in this week's Umfrage polling shows that 26% of Germans, and those 10 years ago, they were not voting for AfD. Only 3% of them were voting for AfD. So we have things changed in Germany. So the people are now motivated to vote for a party like AfD.
And they feel left alone by everybody else. Yeah. And that's not the fault of the AfD. That's the fault of the others.
So that's why I see the AfD more like a symptom for the mistakes of the establishment parties. And I mean, they own the press, right? And 24/7, they are smearing the AfD, regardless of what is our opinion of AfD. Yeah. But the people also can see objective truth. Like they have eyes, right? Like they can see what's happening. For example,
we can see that something doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Like, the big stories aren't true. That's pretty obvious.
So the migration crisis, for example, the refugee crisis in Germany, right? It is a very controversial issue. I totally get it. But there is also a very important issue in Germany, and that is security. Like if you're German and you witness one knife attack, right, in front of you, and instead of dealing with this issue, which is like you find that this person who attacked someone, he was, let's say he has a migrant background, right? Or he was a refugee. But then he was watched by the police. Like he shouldn't have been in Germany to begin with. Like he committed crimes in the past and he wasn't even imprisoned, right? He didn't even receive a sentence. So there was some sort of tolerance you feel in Germany towards this type of things that the people do not want to be tolerated any longer. And you have like, every week we have knife attacks, right? And every week somebody dies.
I think in some of these very high-profile cases, right? If you remember the second major attack in Magdeburg last year, right? The Saudi psychologist, essentially, who drove a car into a Christmas market. When you read on the case, after a while you begin to wonder, is this just neglect? Or was this guy working for someone? Was he being protected because somebody was using him? Was he some form of informant for someone, either German or maybe even another state? You really begin to wonder. And I understand people who begin to wonder about issues like that, and you feel that we are not being told the truth.
I don't think we are being told the truth, but there are some individual cases like some street arguments between people and then somebody raises a knife, for example, or there has been sexual assault or harassment, but then the people do not receive the proper sentence, right? And then the press comes and tries to cover it up, and they're like, oh, we have to be careful of the rise of the radical right instead of focusing on the crime itself. So as if they are really provoking the people in this case to vote for AfD.
The classical case of that sort of media manipulation was the riots in Cologne several years ago, right? And they had a lot to do with harassment, at least sexual harassment in a public space. I think it was mostly close to the area train station, the cathedral there. And that was one issue. It was real. But I remember that very well. The other issue there was that it was absolutely clear that for several days, there was a concerted effort by police and media to suppress the event, like really Orwellian stuff, right? And then they couldn't keep it undercover anymore, and then it came out, right?
Yes.
But people register that as well. They register that there is an attempt to deal with them, the public, by manipulation. They register that. And when you register it once, of course you think, okay, you tried to pull this on me once and it didn't work. How often have you done it before and it did work? How often will you try again? And when these people become then when the public becomes extremely distrustful of the mainstream media and of the authorities, then the public gets accused of, oh, you are all into conspiracy theories. Okay. But then why do you actually lie to us? Why do we sometimes find you actually doing a bit of a conspiracy, right?
Yes, that's 100% true. Guys, as you're watching this conversation with Tarik, this is a weekly podcast we are doing with Tarik every Friday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time, and we're discussing different geopolitical issues, especially focusing on Europe, Russia, China, the United States, the relationship between unipolarity, multipolarity, etc. So if you're liking this conversation with Tarik, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button, because this helps us to reach to more people, and more people will see it on their timeline. Many people say that they activate the notification bell on Syriana Analysis to receive notifications from YouTube when the podcast or live stream starts, but they don't receive it. So I would really appreciate it only if you hit the like button. I read the comments and people say this. And yesterday I received 2 comments. Basically, people were angry for asking them kindly at the end of the video. Like, I do 1 hour live streaming and I spend 4 to 6 hours to prepare a live stream if it's a solo, because I have to prepare everything, what I'm going to show and what arguments I will present. And I put lots of efforts. And then at the end of this live stream, after 1 hour, I just ask kindly, if you can, please just hit the like button and subscribe so that we can reach to the 100K goal. And then some people were upset. It looks like you're looking for fame and you're just looking for numbers. And it's like, oh my God, man, like, I've been working in this for 8 years. Like, don't you think it would be nice if you just can hit the subscription button? That's too much to ask, like, some people are, sometimes it's weird. So this comment was for the people who were really upset, asking them, please subscribe. It looks like it really bothered them. Tarik, we go to Ukraine. It seems that Ukraine signed a minerals pact with the United States, and the United States and Ukraine have signed a deal that is expected to give Washington access to the country's critical minerals and other natural resources. An agreement Kiev hopes will secure long-term support for its defense against Russia. Does this mean the US will continue supplying them with weapons? What's happening?
No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could. It's an option, but that depends on the US. It's not... this agreement, this minerals deal that has been, and it's more than minerals, ultimately. It's everything. It's gas, it's oil, it's critical raw earth minerals, it's aluminum.
Squeezing a lemon completely.
It's everything. It's the basic description, everything that's in the ground is in this deal now, right? So this deal, right, it could happen, and it will happen, I think. And the US could also keep sending or start sending new weapons packages again, right? But it doesn't have to. And this is very typical of this deal, because when you look closely at this deal, it's extremely one-sided. It's extremely exploitative and one-sided. It's stacked very much in favor of the American side and in disfavor of the Kiev regime side, the Ukrainian side in this case. And it's also not actually a very transparent deal. People always say this deal has now been concluded officially, I think on the 1st, right, or the 2nd. In reality, or no, today is the 2nd, on the 1st or the 30th. In reality, the deal also says that a lot of details are still going to be worked out in additional agreements, right? So, and these are really important. And when you read the few Ukrainian media and websites, and there are not many left, that dare to do some real journalism and actually question things, they get into very specific details about all the things that this deal doesn't set down, that it doesn't regulate. And when you look at it, I won't do this now, it's boring, but when you look at it, the pattern is it leaves tons of room for the Americans to shaft the Ukrainians. Yes. That's how this thing is structured. Now, one thing that one should also say is that, and they're now trying to sort of distract us from this, right? But until very recently, Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, and his government were consistently saying one of the main conditions of this deal is that in return, we get some form of security guarantees. Yes. The Americans under Trump were always saying, no, we don't give you security guarantees. And guess what happened? That's what happened. The security guarantees are gone. There's nothing there, right?
So what does Ukraine get from this?
Yeah. You know what? Some people in Ukraine, Ukrainian journalists, the few who are still independent, what they actually compare this to, and I was shocked when I saw this, when I read this in Ukraine. No, they actually published that in Russian. They have Russian and Ukrainian. When I saw this, they compared to the development fund for Iraq. Remember that one? That was
this is the bread against the fuel, right?
Yeah. No. This came even later. This was a successor to bread against fuel. This was 2003. This thing happened in 2003, right after the war, while it was still ongoing. It involved the Americans. It involved the interim, the Iraqi authorities that they established. It involved this provisional authority that they sent in under Bremer, remember him. It involved the Federal Reserve, the New York branch of the Federal Reserve for quite a long time. And what it was this weird construction where they pumped it up with money that they confiscated, for instance, from the Hussein family, right? They found billions there, put this all in there. Some money they took out of the oil export, right? And then they claimed that this fund would be used to somehow help Iraq, right? Development fund. To make this short, the thing turned into a big scandal. Who would have thought that, right? It was exploitative, it was corrupt, it didn't do anything really for Iraq except maintain occupation, right? Not for Iraq, but for the Americans. So now imagine you have a Ukrainian journalist who rightly says, you know what this reminds me of? This looks a little bit like the development fund for Iraq, the DFI. Yeah. And I think that journalist is right. I think he's right. The details are different, but this is extremely lopsided. The Ukrainians didn't get security guarantees. The way that they have this 50-50 rule, it's completely undeveloped. It's very unclear how this will actually work. The way that personnel is going to be set up, that decisions are made, all of this is still murky and up in the air. All of this can still be shaped by the Americans, and you bet it will.
It will.
So what they've done, essentially, they have guaranteed American investors an enormous bonanza. Now, one last thing. The Ukrainians, the government in Ukraine is saying, look, when the Americans started this, demanding this, they said, Trump said, we want to be paid back for what we've already given you, right? Yes. And he mentioned things like 500 billion and stuff. And now the Ukrainians are very proud like this. And they're saying, yeah, this is not happening because this is only about new income. But that's nonsense, of course. That's completely formulaic. Of course, in the end, what happens is that the Americans will pump money out of the country. And if you say, oh, this is for what we already gave you, or if you say, oh, this is officially not for what we already gave you, is damn indifferent. It doesn't make a difference. The gist of the deal is they're bleeding Ukraine. And Bloomberg, you know what Bloomberg is, right? One of capitalism's pravdas, right? Yeah. Bloomberg actually, in its commentary on this deal said, you know, this isn't like the Marshall Plan, right? Remember the Marshall Plan, Americans, Western Europe, and there the Americans were pursuing their own interests, but they were investing, right? So it was a bit of a balance. And Bloomberg says, this isn't even the Marshall Plan. This is much more like the Versailles Treaty, right? But with Ukraine, that's what Bloomberg says, being treated like the enemy.
Yes.
The Americans. Bloomberg, right?
Wow.
So this is a horrific horrific deal. The Americans have waged a proxy war together with the NATO, EU, Europeans. They have used tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 Ukrainians, literally, right? They've bled the country. They've let them die for their idiotic attempt to demote Russia geopolitically. And now that this is winding down because they finally have to understand that Russia is too strong, right? The next step is, as a reward, we're going to bleed you economically, open-ended. Yes. This is what this is. If there is one, in quotation marks, good side to this deal, it's yet another lesson. I don't know how many times it will have to happen. Another lesson to everybody in the future: do not be friends with Americans, right? You can be enemies with the Chinese or the Russians. It's still better than being friends with Americans. American friends will shaft you worse than your worst other enemies. They will. Do not engage with the Americans.
You know, I'm sorry, the former Egyptian president, Hosni Mubarak, this was like probably 15, 20 years ago. He said something, I think it's correct. He said, those whose only cover is the United States get cold. It's like, if your only cover is the US, you're going to get cold, brother. And you know, Egypt was a very good ally of the US for a very long time.
Yeah, and you know what happened to Mubarak, right? Yeah, right?
They did him Ebola and he's gone. Yeah, that's the problem with the US is the relationship is not built on only geopolitics and mutual interests.
They're absolutely ruthless. They're absolutely ruthless. And the only thing that's strange about the US is how long this works. Because you would assume that after a while, everybody in the world has understood, never believe these guys. Never. Never.
The problem is many countries really rely on the US in many things, like including security. And once you start relying on them, let's say after World War II, you relied on the US, you became part of a, let's say, transatlantic alliance. And now it's difficult to leave or to do a shift, you know, like the world doesn't work that way.
So except the US might leave, right?
That's the thing, like the US also... I think in the 60s and the 70s, the US had more, let's say, national-led foreign policy, more like it was our geopolitical interest. We go to war for our interest. Is now more like we can make profits out of wars. And this has become incentivized.
I think it's both now. I think it's the worst of all worlds. It's on one side, you have the geopolitical perspective. And then you have what they call transactional. And what transactional really means, this very fancy word, is we always look for a better deal. I think somebody wrote this recently in the Financial Times. I took it from that guy, I think Martin Wolf, and he's right. What transactional really means is you can never rely on them. You make a deal with them one day, and the next day they say, oh no, we got a better offer, bye-bye. So there's absolutely no good faith, right? You have these two things in play now, and that makes them so incredibly dangerous. I mean, look, when you look at, just very quickly, when you look at the crisis about Iran and its nuclear development program, right? How was this caused? It was caused by the US. There was a deal. And Trump came in, I think it was 2015, and said, no, sorry. It was signed.
It was Netanyahu who pushed him.
Of course, but he didn't, you know, but that's the US for you. The only ones who can tell them what to do is Israel. That makes it better, right? So Trump is the one who comes in and says, we have a deal. We have the JCPOA. We have a deal, but I don't like it. You signed it with my predecessor, Obama, and I don't like it. Off, right? This is the US. That is typical pure US now. There is no reliability. There's nothing left there.
Even for Ukraine, I mean, this was a case for Ukraine. We will support you as long as it takes. Into the president receiving lectures by J.D. Vance and Trump in the Oval Office, it turned completely upside down for him. And now you analyzed, in my opinion, very correctly that this is dystopian for deal, let's say, even for Ukraine. But there are also people in Europe are terrified. And this is a commentary by the Bild, basically. They are criticizing the deal. and they say this is a forced deal on Ukraine. And they say, or who says? Let me check his name. His name is Robert Schneider. Robert Schneider says this deal means we need a European defense alliance that can do without the United States if necessary. Putin and every other aggressor must know that if you mess with Tallinn, you will mess with Warsaw, Berlin, London, Paris, Rome, and Madrid. Otherwise, sooner or later, the century of peace will end for us. So I think already, look, Tallinn or the Baltic countries are already part of NATO, right? So they don't have to send a new signal to Russia. Russia knows that attacking any of these countries would mean an activation of Article 6 of NATO and eventually the participation of the entire alliance against Russia. So, but European alliance, maybe it feels like they're preparing for the day after Trump withdraws from NATO. Like they feel that Trump is going to sabotage the alliance of NATO sooner or later.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I don't think they're only afraid of Trump anymore. As somebody very rightly pointed out also recently, Trump is, after all, somebody who was elected twice. So Trump is not a fluke. Trump stands for a big groundswell in America, right? And that's not just going to go away. Even if Trump, look, there was speculation that he's trying to get a third term. Recently, he seems to have no, not legally. But not legally. That's the point. Not legally. But
Dugin is calling for establishing a kingdom in the United States and appointing Trump a king over the United States.
I know, but I have read Dugin's book on Trump, right? And it's Dugin. Now, here's the thing. Dugin is either trolling. I think there's a possibility he's just trolling.
I really want to know if he's trolling or not.
Or he's incredibly naive about Trump. That's also possible, right? He has this romanticized image of Trump and blah, 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 which is very interesting, by the way, because so many people in the West have this idiotic talking point that Dugin represents the views of the Russian government. He doesn't. Not at all. Nobody in the Russian government is naive about Trump the way Dugin at least pretends to be. It's a classical case where you can see the difference. Anyhow, so here's the thing. Trumpism is not going to go away anyhow. So it could be a successor of Trump who says bye-bye NATO, right? Or what the Americans could do the way they are, they could take the Europeans for another ride, which is we stay in NATO, we the Americans, right? But we have made up our mind. We are not going to protect you. We don't really tell you, but we won't do it in the end. But if we go and have a war with China, for instance, over Taiwan, we're going to call on you. That would be a reason for the Americans to keep NATO on the back burner, right? And the Europeans are dumb enough to play along, maybe. But here's the point. The Europeans who now are saying that, oh, maybe we have to look after ourselves. Oh, really? Really? You've reached the point that the goal was aware of decades ago? You've got there, and the only reason they reached this point is that the Americans have been kicking them, right? Yes. It's not that these Europeans suddenly get like very independent-minded and they're like, hey, how would it be if we could take care of ourselves? No, the reason is that the Americans are very, very brutally showing them we might abandon you. And only under that pressure do these people even begin to think about finally standing on their own 2 feet. That's one very bad sign. That's a very bad sign. The second very bad sign is that what has happened now in Europe is that the idea of making Europe security independent, defense autonomous, stand on its own feet is the same as going to war with Russia. Those two ideas have nothing to do with each other, actually, in logic. The idea that something like Europe should be able to defend itself makes sense. You can still argue about it, but it's not an insane idea, right? You may very well say that the current European Union is so dangerous and weird that it better shouldn't have any military at all, but that's a different question. But the ultimate, the fundamental idea that something as big as Europe, with its industries and its people and its demography and its money, should be able to defend itself, this very fundamental idea is not insane. The idea that that is all about going to war with Russia, that's insane. Now, I can tell you a test for these people. The next one who says, we have to stand on our own feet, we have to have our own nuclear weapons for the European Union, and this, and this, and this. Ask them a very simple question. Are you ready to use all of this against the US if you have to? Will you deter the US with your nuclear weapons if you acquire them? Will you actually train some of your warheads and rockets on the United States? That's deterrence. That's how it's done, right? The answer will probably...
I don't think they have thought about it.
Exactly. But if they want to be independent, that would mean they would have to adopt a posture of objectively assessing all security risks. And if they did that, they would quickly find out that our worst security risk, by any measures, capacities, hands down, and also ideological predisposition and political instability, is the United States. I'm not saying this for political reasons. Analytically, our worst security risk is the United States. It's actually not Russia. Now, as long as they don't understand that, I won't take anything from these guys seriously.
Oh, guys, we came to the last part of today's conversation, and we're going to watch a funny video now. But before that, this is the Substack of Tarik, as it is called on the screen, substack.com/@Tarik Cyril Amar. If you're looking forward for Tarik's publications, he is definitely publishing on his own Substack, but also on RT International. If you can navigate through the blocking on Russia Today in Europe or in the United States, you can either read it in the archives, or you can also use one of these VPN programs, and you can. The link is also in the description below for you to know, guys. Last part, Tarik. This is something I didn't expect, but the CIA has released 2 Chinese language videos on YouTube and other social media channels in a campaign to sow disillusionment among Chinese Communist Party members and boost efforts to recruit spies in China. The US intelligence agency posted the video on social media platforms, including Instagram and Facebook, on Thursday. They have titled, "Why I Contacted CIA to Take Control of My Fate," and "Why I Contacted CIA for a Better Life." Look, I will... even my headphones fell. Anyways, the headphones. Anyways, I will show the video with English subtitles, and you can jump in anytime you want to comment, because you told me to. We can maybe watch it segment by segment, right? So this is the video now on our friend's page, Carl Za. And once I play it, you can, whenever you want, you can jump in. But for the people, guys, you have to focus on the subtitles. There are English subtitles. This is a video in Mandarin. Okay, let's take a look.
俗话说筑梦人生，可惜我是为他人之梦。这场梦中，我无法决定结局。
So look, I mean, when I saw it, I've seen one of those 2, and this is the one I've seen already. And when I saw that, I was like, "What are you talking about? The American dream? The dream where they tell you you can master your own life and you become prosperous and you have a career and a nice house and a family, and then it doesn't come true? That's the American dream, actually."
I mean,
what are you talking about?
I swear to God, Tarik, if you see the prices of the real estate in the US, it is like they are telling the people you cannot buy a house, an apartment. Like, you forget about it. You will own nothing, basically. It's so expensive.
Well, you can also look at poverty statistics. I've done that like a few weeks ago for a long piece I was writing. And again, now I haven't got all, but the shares of direct poverty and people who live basically in this sort of in the antechamber of poverty all the time were very precarious. It was enormous. I think in the end you were at something like 20-25% combined. I'm not making this up. And these are American figures, right? So this whole idea that they can talk from this position of, you know, everybody's happy here and prosperous and we are all realizing our dreams. It's insane. It's insane. By the way, you know, you said this very well. The idea is to appeal to disillusioned Chinese functionaries. You know what they could do to disillusion a Chinese functionary, the Americans? They could put him on an American train or maybe the New York subway. He would look around himself and we would be like, what is going on here? I'm so disillusioned with the US. It's insane. It's not only that this whole idea, they've done this, by the way, for Iran, they've done it for North Korea before, they've done it for Russia. So this is not the first such campaign. But the whole idea that they are in a position as United States to project outward, right, this image and imply that everything's wonderful with us and you have it so hard, right, in your frustrated lives. People aren't so dumb. They know so much more about you now than you think.
That's
you live
true.
in social media world. The other thing is, of course, what I found striking is that what the video implies is that Chinese people working for the government or being engaged in the party or both, that they are all just concerned with their private lives. And that's a very offensive idea, right? Maybe Americans are like that. Maybe they're sort of projecting their own minds onto the Chinese. What they don't see is, and sometimes they know it, but here they don't see it, is the Chinese, many of them are very, very patriotic.
Yes.
So even the ones who may say, rightly or wrongly, of course there are people in China who have a hard time and who are not happy, who may say, yeah, I'm not happy. I don't have the career I want. I don't have the income I want. They don't automatically come to you, the CIA. If you approach them like this and say, are you happy? No, you're unhappy, so work for foreign spy service. Their answer will still be, F off. F off. Because they're patriots. Have they still not learned that? Have they still not learned that? That not
I've seen
everybody
lots of
is
Chinese
viable?
writing this, by the way. Many Chinese people were commenting on this, like thanking the CIA for posting the video and boosting the patriotic movement in China, basically saying like, thank you, really, like you're helping us here in China. Continue, weiter so, you know?
Yeah. The other thing, can I say one more thing?
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
But the other thing is, of course, that you wonder what they really want, right? The people who make these videos. So look, maybe this is just the cousin of somebody at the CIA who's making videos and he needs money, right? That would be one thing, corruption. The other thing is that there may be people in the CIA who think we are not going to find spies this way. We are not going to recruit spies, but we want to induce a climate of paranoia in Chinese society,
that's true.
where people begin to think, oh my God, maybe somebody is reacting to this. But once again, what they're doing here is so primitive. If I can see it, everyone in China can see it. You're not that smart, people, you know, dear Central Intelligence Agency.
And then they will say China sent spying balloons over the United States and complain about it 24/7.
You know, maybe the balloon is gonna join the US. You know?
Yes. Be careful, guys, about from balloons. Let's continue this video because it's hilarious. Let's watch it.
最终都是他人做手。照理来说。 中规中矩，努力低头做事，应该换来美好人生。
Yeah, like it's what they're telling people in American schools.
好像只有少数人能得到这种美好。
Oh, only a few people? You mean like American
真相摆在
oligarchs?
面前时，我还能装多久？这种例行的自我检讨，是让人感到荒谬。众所皆知的秘密是。 领导们口口声声说要让人民过上好日子，但结果却全不是这么一回事。
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Like in the USA, when they tell you to give you good life, it's actually all true, you know?
Yeah. And the thing is, I also read in one of the comments, somebody from China says, like, why the speaker is talking in a Japanese accent? This is not even Chinese who is speaking on the video. It's like, you didn't find one Chinese to do this voiceover, you know, like people were really...
Because that's how hard it is to recruit someone.
Yes. I swear to God, like this made me laugh so hard because if they couldn't find one Chinese to do basically a voiceover over a video,
you know,
how do
that
they
makes
expect
me
to recruit
think.
people?
I wonder if when they did this with the Russians, if they found somebody with a German accent, you know, come and work for us,
With us.
betray your country.
But
It's-
I mean, imagine if China or Russia made video like this to recruit people in the US, it would have been a shitstorm all over the place. Like everybody would have been
absolutely.
talking
No,
about
absolutely.
it now.
No. Also,
This
the only
crazy.
ones who are allowed to spy all over the US are the Israelis. I mean, I'm sorry,
no.
but you know,
No,
I
we
mean,
crossed the red line
look,
now.
I'm sorry. They never spy. The Israelis never spy on anyone.
It's anti-Semitic, my friend. If you
Ah,
say
yes,
Israelis
absolutely.
spy on the Americans, it never happened. only it's reported that they stole some
They were
nuclear
tried. I mean, they
secrets.
caught Israeli spies. You know, there were accidents where they accidentally actually caught an Israeli spy.
I mean, on 9/11, they were dancing Israelis.
I don't remember
and we
that. I don't remember this. It's like Olaf Scholz at the Cum-Ex affair. I don't remember that. I'm sorry.
Never happened, guys. This is just a conspiracy theory. So this
Exactly.
podcast, we never speak about facts. This is just
Yeah.
fun and sarcasm. Don't take it seriously, guys.
Exactly. It's really a clown show.
Yeah. Don't believe us. We're not saying anything important here. So if you're liking this sarcasm, guys, and if you're not bothered and angry and mad at me for asking,
You
please
know,
kindly.
what I really wonder about Kevork, I have to say one thing. Look, if I were Chinese, I would be so tempted to give them all sorts of fake calls on the CIA line and set them up. You know, it would be so much fun. You know?
Oh my God, yes. Man, Tarik, thank you so much, really, for this weekly brilliant, insightful, and also fun conversation with you. I think there are so many people out there doing analysis, but we're trying to also add some humor. Sometimes my
The word
English
is so horrible if you don't laugh about it. It's unbearable.
since I learned German, by the way, my first of all, my German has become broken since I moved to Berlin. My English is broken now because I learned German. My Armenian is broken. People I speak Armenian with them, they're like, what is Mandarin? What are you talking to us? And my Arabic, I confuse between the feminine and masculine because in my mother tongue, we don't have a feminine and masculine. 4 languages, all are destroyed. But we're doing fine. We're still trying to deliver a message here. So really, thank you so much, Tarik, for coming to the show again. We will definitely do another podcast conversation with Tarik, guys, next Friday on the 9th of May 2025. So stay tuned for that. If you're liking this show, the simple thing to do is just hit the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't get mad at me. We are only fewer than 900 subscriptions away from hitting the 100K goal. So I feel now embarrassed asking people to subscribe to this YouTube channel after the bashing. And Tarik's Substack is in the description below. If you like to support the independent work I'm doing here, you can also find different means in the description below as well. So I will see you next Monday, and we will see you next Friday. Peace be upon you and upon your families, and peace be upon you, Tarik. Salam.
Thank you.